Hey, I'm Danielle, a techie serial entrepreneur.
I'm Cicely, a health tech nurse.
I'm Priscilla, and I'm an award-winning creative.
Welcome to the More Than Graphics podcast, a virtual safe space for women and minorities in the tech and creative industries. Together, we're that tribe. Well, hello, everyone. How are we today? Welcome to the More Than Graphics podcast. Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm your techie retro pixel sorceress who's always pushing marketing and creative tech for minority and entrepreneurs.
And I'm Cicely, the registered nurse who works in tech and loves utilizing innovation, telehealth, and cultural awareness to better serve maternity and reproductive health patients.
I'm Priscilla, a creative who mixes old school wisdom with modern inspiration, and I help others find gratitude in a world full of screens.
This is a safe space for women, minorities, a safe place for you. And if you're a minority in the tech and creative industry, we are a top 10% ranked podcast by listennotes.com. I am always excited to share. And today we are amplifying one more, and it's a good one, y'all. Like, it's not even like we ain't cheating y'all today. Okay. We doing full cracker, full cheese on cracker. Okay. Cool. Today's topic really focuses on align, and in today's rapidly changing world, the ability to adapt and align is more important than ever, especially in the creative field. So these statistics that I kind of pulled up illustrate the shifting landscape and the need for professionals to proactively align their skills and strategies for success. For example, the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2025, half of all employees will need reskilling and upskilling. Wow, right? How about a study by Lucid Press that found that brand consistency can increase revenue by up to 20%? I mean, that bar none, right? In a survey by Gallup found that employees who have a mentor are more likely to be engaged, satisfied, and stay within their company. So all of these kind of touch point with our guest. Again, today's episode topic is align. Ladies, what do you think of when you think of align?
When I think of align, I just think of just kind of things going together, things falling into place, things being cohesive, just the pieces of a puzzle kind of connecting the dots.
Ooh, I like that.
What she said. No, for me, align is different because I think more of spine, neck, just because of everything that I was through last year and the year before. But also in that alignment is not only just the physical thing, but the alignment like within us and mentally. You know, for me, it was aligning my body out of alignment, made my brain have to, my mind and everything have to kind of pull it all together on a deeper level.
Ooh, I love that. Okay. Operation. That's what I think about when I think about alignment. I honestly, when I think of alignment, it comes to a state of space and place. It's a place of security. When I think of alignment, I think of aligning myself, like with Cicely, and aligning myself with Priscilla, and the things that we're able to do together because of alignment. And like, what do you do when you want to align with someone? Like, how do you even go about that process? Or what does it look like to align with someone? Is it showing up? Is it paying a price? Is it being coached? Is it being mentored? Is it something else entirely? So I like that alignment has so many different metamorphoses, if you will. It can branch out in one way and completely end up in a completely different state. And so that's kind of what I think of when I think of alignment. Cicely, would you like to do us the grand entrance?
Absolutely. So today's guest is Barney Abramson, creative director, mentor, and advocate for designers. Barney is a seasoned creative leader with over 2 decades of experience across gaming, entertainment, and energy. As the creative director at Southwest Gas Corporation, he leads the visual identity and creative strategy for an energy provider serving 2.5 million customers across California, Nevada, and Arizona. With a background in graphic design, branding, and marketing, Barney is passionate about storytelling that connects with people. He's also a dedicated mentor on ADPList, helping the next generation of designers navigate their careers. Beyond the corporate world, Barney shares insights as an Afro-Latino creative in corporate America, using social media to spark conversations about design, leadership, and career growth. Bienvenidos! Welcome.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm really happy to be here today.
Awesome. I'm super pumped just because I personally know you, so I feel like for
Yes.
me it's like such a good friend to friend connection. But for a lot of folks out there who don't know more about you, which I'm hoping they will do in these show notes today, we talk a lot about leadership, and you just recently, very recently, achieved a very high level of leadership in regards to mentorship, and I think that's just the level of agency that we need to see and feel, especially right now in 2025. I
Absolutely.
wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit more on the back end, like what when you saw that recently being listed as top 100, right?
Yeah.
ADP list mentor, which I just recently started. You inspired my journey, by the way.
I saw that you
Um,
joined. Congrats.
Thank you. And I really wanted to kind of like how did you feel when you saw that? When that released to you recently? Like were you surprised? Were you like crying? Were you how are you on the spectrum?
Oh gosh, I mean, I was very surprised. It was not something that I was expecting. Mentoring to me is like that one thing that I do that I don't really think about it. I don't think about the numbers or trying to get to a particular level. I just want to mentor. So I do it. I give my time, and to have the recognition just kind of made me feel like, wow, look, what I'm doing actually is resonating with people, and I'm helping. So seeing kind of the numbers piled together and being recognized was very nice. Still very a bit surprised. I've had a lot of conversations with my mentees this week. But yeah, I'm feeling very proud about myself for that.
As well deserved. You should be. Like that's incredible. There are
Thank
thousands
you.
of people on ADPList who are actively doing mentors and mentoring others who are up and
Absolutely.
coming in the area. And so before we even knew about this accolade, I already knew Barney and I clicked very well in that
Right.
space of wanting
Yes.
to help and encourage other ones who are up and coming, but also specifically wanting to reach back to the ones that look like us, that are
Absolutely.
Black and brown communities.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how my mentorship started. It was, I was rejected by a mentor many years ago. It was a very vulnerable time in my career. I didn't know what I should be doing. I felt very lost. And I went to my director and said, would you consider mentoring me? Because I feel like you seem to have it figured out, right? How do I get to that next level? And this person out like literally rejected me. He said, Barney, you're doing all the right things, and I don't think that I can mentor you. And I remember leaving that meeting defeated, feeling like, wow, I took a risk, asking someone, being vulnerable, and that rejection was very painful, and it took me a long time to recover. And then I just felt like, okay, I got to just put my pants on and just continue to do it myself. And years went by. I was able to, I guess, level up in my career. And when I got to a place where I look back and I realized, like, okay, I'm kind of the senior person in my team now. I'm leading a team, and I realized, and I started remembering of all those times that I felt lost. So the way that I was managing my teams was with that kind of mentorship mentality. And then once I found ADPList, I thought, okay, can I bring this outside of my job and into other people, other designers, because I didn't want them to feel like I felt when I was rejected. So that's kind of my origin story in terms of mentorship.
I love it. I feel like that's the part where I feel like I am most drawn to because at some point in our lives, we've all faced rejection, right? At
Yep.
some point in our career, we're all going to be able to ask a golden opportunity and the door still say no, right? The answer
Right.
still say no. But instead of you taking that as internally as a complete defeat and never doing it again, because so many of
Right.
us do that, I feel like we see the TikTok reels where each generation goes to the door and you see how they react just because of the generation they were
Right.
born in.
Right.
And I feel like we were like, the 1990s kids, we were going through the door. Yeah, we felt it, but we kept on going,
You just keep
right?
going. Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
of
and
course,
that was the feeling. That was
yeah,
exactly the feeling. I just felt like I just needed to continue what I was doing. And I mean, I've always had a belief in myself to kind of overcome obstacles. Yeah, so then when I got to a point that I could give back, I just started doing it as soon as I could.
my last question before I move on to everyone else's, I'm sorry. I wanted to define
Oh,
what alignment is for you as a creative director, as a mentor, as an advocate. What does alignment mean in the context of design and creative leadership?
Absolutely. And I love this question because I feel like this is an area that I have spent a little bit of time doing a bit of homework for myself. And it is a question that I get a lot from my mentees when they feel lost in their careers. And to me, alignment is when your values, your skills, and your purpose kind of come together. So if you think of like a Venn diagram, for me, I would have values at the very top. Then I would have my purpose and then my skills. And that center area where they collide is really where I feel like you can find alignment. So, when I talk about values, it's really the things that matter most to you, right? Whether it is creativity, mentorship, actually for me, right? Creativity, is it, integrity, or maybe it's humanity in general. Like you like to help humanity. So that might be your value. Your skills, obviously, that's easy. That's kind of what, the things that you can do. But I like to add that your skills in terms of alignment is more about the things that come to you naturally, right? Not, maybe you learned a particular skill or you went to school for a particular career, but there's that one thing that you can do naturally that I feel like when we hone into that thing, alignment tends to work better. And then obviously the last thing is purpose. So if those three things are moving in the right direction, that's when I feel aligned. And I felt like I went through so much and I finally found alignment in my career in the last maybe five years. And that's kind of what it feels to me. It's having my values, my skills, knowing that I can contribute, and then my purpose all into one. So that's how I would define it.
I think that is wonderful. And like you said, just typically when all those things kind of come together, that's when you feel at peace. I feel like that's when it's like the path of least resistance.
Right.
So you're not you're not going against the grain. And you mentioned skills, like
Yes.
versus something that you can learn, because we can all learn to code, or we can learn to
Right.
do, product engineering, whatever the case may be. But is it a passion for you, and does it also come easy for you? Like, do you enjoy it? Right.
Right.
So I think that's so important that you mentioned that as well. And then kind of in that same vein, one of the questions I had for you was just kind of talking about like alignment with self and being true to self. So you do share openly your experience as an Afro-Latino in
Yes.
Corporate America, which we all know as someone who is outside of the status quo for what corporate America typically looks like. There's always challenges and different things that can come along with that. But for you, how important is it to bring your authentic self to work? And then also, how do you encourage others to find that same alignment that you just talked about between their personal identity? So, bringing in, your language, your culture, bringing in
Absolutely.
all those things, and then
Right.
also still being professional. So how do you encourage
Right.
people to find that alignment? And how do you do it for yourself too?
Right. That's the balance, right? Like, how do you do that and also remain professional and keep a job, right? So, I mean, growing up, or at least in the beginning of my career, I was very insecure. Again, things that I learned later on when I did some self-discovery, I realized that I had very low self-esteem and I was very insecure, mostly because I was typically the only Black person in a creative team. I've been the only Black person or Latino person in an entire department. And at one point, I was the only person of color in the entire building. So when you're in a space like that, it's very intimidating, right? And you want to simulate, you want to talk like other people talk, you want to be knowledgeable and understand references and things like that I just wasn't accustomed to. So for me, my biggest sticking point was my accent. I used to hate my accent. And I remember going, I grew up in the Dominican Republic. I came to New York when I was 10 years old, and I moved into a small little immigrant town called in Lawrence, Massachusetts, which is north of Boston. And I remember that my town was like literally like 90% Latino. So it was like Puerto Rican, Dominicans, and like a little bit of everything else. And I didn't have to assimilate. I could speak the language. I could dance merengue. I could go to the corner store and speak Spanish, right? So it wasn't until I went to college that I had that culture shock, like, oh my God, okay, I got to speak English all day long, right? And the same happened when I went into corporate. I found myself like having to learn so many things and feeling kind of like I didn't understand what was going on. So the insecurity with my accent was huge. I would never speak during meetings. I was always quiet. I always just kind of took instructions and I didn't really know how to push back. And that went on for many, many years. And it wasn't until I started working with my director, and I worked in a very diverse marketing department. It was a global company, so we had folks from Kazakhstan, and they were Dutch and Italian, and they all had an accent. And I remember sitting in a room, and we all had an accent, and I thought, wow, look, everyone has an accent in here. Like, why should I be censoring myself, right? And that process of me kind of like, okay, let me let go and start just being myself. It did take a long time after that discovery for me to feel like I could bring myself to work. I did a lot of reading and learning about the self and my insecurities and my self-esteem. And once I was able to get over that, it just exploded. I just became just my natural self. I did have to switch careers and go to a different company where I felt like I was more accepted. So finding the right place is key, I think. Not every place is supportive of being your authentic self. Some places do want you to be professional and always keep, a certain decorum, but finding the right place really helped. Finding the right team really helped for me. And then I really felt like when I was being myself, I was being more productive. I was doing better work. My creativity was better. And over time, I realized that, I got it. I got this. I figured it out. And those are some of the things that I teach to my mentees now, is kind of how to bring your authentic self to work.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that is such a great point. I used to live in New York City. I went to college there. So I got a chance to kind of experience, I call it like reverse culture shock.
Yeah, okay.
I come from a very small town.
Right.
At the time, I think Lexington was under 300,000 people, like way back in 2006, 2007. So I came from a super small town, like very limited and everything. Then I came to New York, and like I was exposed to so many wonderful things. And it was kind of the same thing. I just felt kind of like, like what's happening here? Like I'm kind of afraid to be who I am because I'm this country bumpkin from this tiny town.
Yep.
So I very much understand that. But being bilingual, speaking another language, learning about other cultures, it helps to open up those things for you. And I love how you said when you were at the international company, you got to be in a room full of people who also had accents.
Right.
And I love, for me, I'm a person who loves accents because I want to know all about where you're from and like tell me like what, where your family's from. Let's talk about it. But I understand that obviously that's not the norm, and especially in corporate America. And it's very much like, everything's got to be polished and perfect.
Absolutely.
And we know that, as people of color, as people who come from different cultures, things are not always like that. And that's okay. That's the beauty of it. We bring our ruggedness, we bring our culture, we bring our music, we bring our food, we bring all these things to our experience. And, this, ladies and gentlemen, is why DEI is so important.
Exactly.
We bring all of those experiences in, and it helps to create the best work environment and getting, producing the best results for everyone involved. So I love that you said that. And thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, absolutely. No, I agree. And it's funny that, people of color, in terms of marketing and advertising, we're on every TV channel when it comes to, we're leading music charts, right? We are leading the NFL and other things, right? But then behind the scenes, we're not welcome, right? Like, it's like, I don't understand. So yeah, but I mean, there is that definite finesse and balance that you have to figure out, like, what's the right balance of like bringing my authentic self and also being professional and getting the job done, right? And being collaborative and including other folks, right? So we have to, again, I'm going to keep going back to this thing about self-awareness. You have to be a bit self-aware that, I can't go into work and swear and put my feet up and be loud and obnoxious, right? Maybe you do have a lot of energy and you're a bubbly personality and you do want to bring that to work, but there's a balance. And I think that we have to be aware of ourselves and understand, like, okay, I can be myself, but I also don't have to be annoying to the point that now people are, keeping me out of meetings and not inviting me to things. So we have to do the work of finding that balance. But I do encourage everyone to bring your authentic self to work. You will find yourself a lot happier and a lot more productive.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's what I tell a lot of, because I'm with you guys, I do branding, and I tell a lot of my clients, I said, we want your brand has to, you can know right away. Okay, you got a little bit of quirk. I want you. Right. No, not, and it's like, you have to kind of be like, don't hide. I was saying also, it's like being a profile on a dating app. Don't catfish, right? Don't catfish.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was wondering, because I was really feeling aligned with when you're talking about insecurity and being your authentic self and stuff. And I've got a question about it's like balancing. A lot of creatives, we struggle with the balancing artistic expression with the needs of our client. So that's kind of tough, right?
Right.
When we are being authentic and we're showing this is what our thing is, but then having to meet the needs of a client or a company. So how do you, as a creative director, help your team navigate that tension and find the sweet spot of alignment in that?
Absolutely,
sense?
yeah. Thank you for that question. So I feel like I knew very early that I wanted to be a manager and I wanted to lead a team because I felt like I was able to like go to a sales meeting or go to like a product meeting or meet with like the finance team, and I was able to like suck in all their insecurities and issues that they were having or things that they wanted to fix, or problems they wanted to solve with the creative team. And then I was able to kind of absorb that information and then go back to my team and deliver it in a way that they felt excited about it. Not all the time. There's always those projects that you hate, but I felt like I was always able to deliver that to my team in a way that they could absorb it and really want to contribute and work on certain projects. I think what I do now, I am very honest with my team. I let them know like, hey, certain things have to be done and they have to be done a certain way. We don't understand everything that's happening above us, right? We don't understand the stock market and the sales numbers from last month, right? Like we may not know that, right? So when leadership is asking for something, sometimes we have to go ahead and fulfill that request. But then I also find projects that are passion projects within my team. And we actually recently worked on a passion project where my team was able to write the script. They were able to build the entire scene that they wanted to record. We were able to, I literally went to wherever you want to go, whatever you need to get this video produced the way that you want it, let's do it. I want to give you 100% autonomy over this video. And I let my video producer create it. And we worked on the same video last year. We won a bunch of awards. I was very happy with him and what he did. And this year I said the same thing. I'm like, this is your baby project. Go ahead and do it. Right. And I think giving him that permission to kind of take that project on, and drive it 100% allows him to then later on work on other projects and also give 100% because he knows that it means a lot to me. Like it means a lot to me to finish this project. Right now, when you have a passion project, I'm also going to support you. So giving that support, right? Explaining things. I think also explaining to them what's happening with the company. I also encourage my team to like learn about the stock market, learn about our business, right? Attend that meetings call that's happening next week, right? Because if you start understanding the business and the insecurities that are happening in the market or whatever it may be, when someone comes to you and say, hey, we need a video about X, Y, and Z, you're going to know why. So again, just being aware of what's happening outside of your department, delivering the message in a way that the creators can understand it, and giving them the space to be creative in other projects, I think is kind of the balance that I try to create in my team.
I love that. I really value the fact that you are constantly thinking inside your bubble, but also being conscious of the other bubbles that are interacting with you. And I think that showcases, one, a lot of wisdom, and two, just a lot of the experience that comes with being in those type of high stressful, but also high yielding situations. So I think it's so also very reflective of you personally and the culture and experiences that you've personally had. Like how many of our listeners right now are probably thinking about their accent? They're thinking about the slick hair versus the natural curly looks. They're thinking about all the other aspects that bring out their personality, their heritage. And they're also thinking about how that can still be part of the acclimation process of fitting in, right?
Exactly.
And so I really value the fact that you share a lot of your personal adversary moments where you're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work for you.
Exactly.
And I love this, Barney. I love this so much. I really value that insight. You have years ahead of me, and so I always listen with intent for me, because I'm taking notes personally on myself as I'm listening to the way that you are also coming about gearing and leading teams. So I just, always mesmerized and encouraged listening to you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Okay, so we talk about times that you had to grow up or out of something, and what did it teach you?
Oh God, I had to, I had to, I think if I'm thinking of the most significant thing that I had to do was growing out of the gaming industry. And I guess not just the gaming industry, but growing out of like um, the passion that I had for my career at one point. But specific to the gaming industry, when I started working in the gaming industry, by gaming I mean casino gaming. However, I just want to be clear that casino gaming is very advanced, and some of these games and the development that goes behind it and the production of these games is in line with like Xbox and other products. So when I worked for the gaming industry and working for a big gaming company, probably at the time, probably the number one gaming company in the world, our company owned 60% of every casino floor globally. So you would walk into any casino and 60% of the slot machines were from the company I worked for. So I felt very proud. I felt like I was working for like the Nike of gaming, right? And I was very proud, and I identified with my job. I really did identify, and I thought that was the thing that was bringing me happiness. And I was in gaming for almost 20 years. But the place that I worked at, I was so engulfed in this job. The job really just identified me, and I didn't realize that was taking away from things at home. That was taking away from my mental health. It was bringing me a lot of stress, and I didn't care. I really felt like I have to continue. I have to climb up the ladder, right? I really felt comfortable in my career and in that job, but not realizing that I was kind of burning out over time. And I eventually did. I burnt out, and I ended up leaving that job and leaving the gaming industry and taking a break and saying like, what about that job made me feel so stressed? And I'm gonna have to do some work, right? Finding that alignment, right? So like I had to do the work on my values, my purpose, and re-identifying my skills to be able to be aligned. And leaving that career, leaving that job, it was really what helped me overcome a lot of things. So leaving that, it was what and just being aware of that was happening to me. It took a long time. Thankfully, my wife is a therapist, so I was able to hear it at home and eventually listen to what she was telling me. And we, I made that hard decision of leaving that career, but my life is much better for it.
I'm like trying to like grasp something. First off, what's up, wifey? We gotta make sure we name drop that one, because therapist in the house, doctor. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about workshops here in just a minute, but I really want to like also kind of deep dive a little bit more into that. We talk a lot about the gaming industry, and sometimes you hear a lot of streamers even kind of go through this burnt out phase. They are creatives, believe it or not. Gamers are creatives. Absolutely. And so we use a lot of that input to kind of navigate what works best in that industry or in that market. What infatuates me the most about you talking about specifically how that helped you come up and out of a situation, or how you were able to come up and out of that situation, was a lot of what I feel like a lot of creatives can relate to. They can relate to those feelings of the alignment, right? The misalignment.
Misalignment for sure.
Yeah. And how we can like address that, right? Like first acknowledging it, because I feel like a lot of people don't even acknowledge that there's a misalignment. They just feel like something's wrong with them, or something, just something small and inadequate, but it really is something much deeper. Acknowledging that you need to move in it. Like that's the part that I feel like so many of us struggle with. They just feel like if I just keep doing it day in and day out, if I be the machine, then I won't feel this way. The reality is we are human. We are not machines. And so those feelings are not going to go anywhere. They're just going to continue to grow. So what do you do, right? In that misalignment, when you start feeling that way to the point where it becomes so a little bit uncomfortable, right, to sit in.
Mhm.
And so I just really, really, really value that you give this practical advice to kind of help other people who are in similar places.
Yeah.
This is very helpful.
Yeah, you know, one thing I felt when I was in the middle of that career, I felt like no one. I don't know why I thought this way, but I always felt like no one's going to hire me. Like no one's going to pay me what they pay me here. No one's going to let me be a manager somewhere else, right? So I really attached a lot of things to this career, and it wasn't suiting me. It was not helping me. I was misaligned, and it wasn't until I left that I realized like it wasn't as big as I made it out to be in my head. I mean, it took a lot of work and several years for me to be on the other side of that. But I mean, I even went through like maybe TMI, but I was under a lot of stress. We had a yearly trade show that happened in October. So from like June to October, it was like all hands on deck for like 3 to 4 months till this trade show was over. And I would get very agitated during that time, and I was not a really good husband to be around. I guess it's what I heard. I remember feeling stress, and I started having a lot of stomach issues, right? And it was really manifesting in like my stomach, right? And I remember I had this again TMI, but I got this lump on my side that I thought was a hernia or something else. And every time that I was feeling stressed, I would get this pain on my side. And then literally one day I took off my shirt and I had a bump like on the side of my body. And I was like, I went to the doctor. I had a lot of studies. No one could figure out what it was. They thought it was a hernia. So I had surgery. They couldn't find a hernia when they did surgery. So I ended up they ended up doing another procedure. And it was like it was just like a fatty mass that had grown on my side. And that's all it was. It was like a mass or a tumor that just, it was nothing. So they removed it and it just kind of went away. And it was right around the same time that I left my job. So like the stress went away and the tumor went away. And I was like, you know what? That was a manifestation of the stress that I was under, was like literally manifested itself into this mass on my side. And I know that sounds crazy, but I really believe that that's what it was. I mean, I've never had stomach issues ever again.
Absolutely. I 110% believe you. I think we all can relate. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always say like my, it's like I may keep pushing, but when my body tells me, hey, I can't go. Many times over the years, I've told you girls, it's like, they know that it's like, I felt like, my body will say, no, we're going to just shut down and you can't keep going. So
yeah, you're done.
It's like putting baby in the corner. So you have an Instagram handle and it's Creative Central. Okay. And it suggests a focus on centering creativity. And you already talked about burnout and everything, but how do you stay inspired and connected to that creative core?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So, it's funny, my entire career, I remember going into work and like doing the work that was in front of me. Right. And I used my skills that I got from college and my previous job, right? But I was very much like head down. I would just come in, do the work, do the best I could. Thankfully, I felt like I had good creative talent, so it kind of carried me throughout most of my career. But one thing that I didn't do at a younger age, and again, we didn't have the internet like we have now. We didn't have so much media and data to consume like we do now, right? We didn't have YouTube and all that. But back then, I never really paid. I really didn't pay attention to the industry. I didn't look outside to see what others were doing. I didn't read. I didn't join blogs. I didn't listen to podcasts. I just felt like I needed to do the work that was in front of me. And it wasn't until much later on when I had more kind of mental space that I started reading and joining and participating in groups, creative groups, and really just absorbing as much information about the industry to keep me updated and keep me to be able to be. I mean, once you become obviously a manager and you're now a team is looking at you like, hey, Barney, we need more ideas. Like, I have to give ideas on video and web and print. So when I got to that point, I realized that I needed to do more. I needed to start becoming more inspired. So and I encourage my mentees all the time to do this. It's like join creative groups, right? Spend time on in those groups, seeing what others are designing, commenting, sharing, meeting new people, meeting new creatives. go to conferences. I mean, I've been to Config last year. I went to Adobe Max. And I'm going to, again, this year, like, go to conferences. They inspire you. You learn new things. Podcasts are great. Obviously, you'll know that. So I think by looking outward and finding what others are doing and really kind of get in there, get into the industry, own it. It's your industry. So I encourage young designers to contribute to it, but also take away from it. And that'll really help you stay focused. I mean, right now, I feel like I'm doing a little bit too much because, like, I'll get like an email with like a curated list of articles to read, and it's like 20 of them. Then I get a podcast, and then, so many things, and I'm like absorbing all this information. So like for me now, ideas are just sitting in my head waiting to come out. Like I'll write a blog, and then I have to design something, and so it really does help to do that, to really immerse yourself in the industry.
Totally get it. Like, and I love that you're telling people not only to connect and get it out there, but take away, right? Like that's a huge part of creativity. It's not just what you put out, it's what you put in and the inputs that you put into yourself. So I love that. And it's such a huge part of my personal creative journey is not only what I'm putting out, but what I'm putting in. And so hearing this wisdom and knowing that so many other people are listening to this wisdom and embracing all of it, I know we'll travel way far than what you probably have ever imagined, Barney. So thank you. Thank you for that.
So like I said, I'm trying to get to the question before, that one back there starts
the other one
crazy. Oh, there you go. But so speaking of like kind of mental health and just kind of how things are as well. So you do run the workshops on design and mental health, and that's obviously a crucial topic. Not just I don't like to call it a hot button topic. It's something that we should have been talking about for years, but I'm glad it's something that's like now in the spotlight. But how do you see the connection between personal well-being and creative alignment? You've kind of talked about it like throughout our talk today, but like how do you see that personal well-being component working hand in hand with creative alignment? And then what advice do you have for designers in order to prioritize their mental health and create a more sustainable work-life balance? And even as a parent or as a husband, I think the people who have outside relationships outside of work, I think that's always important. So what advice would you have for people for that? Right.
Yeah. I mean, mental health is a big topic for me. It's something that, and I can't take all the credit. Obviously, my wife became a therapist later in her career. I was lucky enough to be part of that journey with her. She went back to school, then she got her master's degree, and learning. I felt like we learned to be therapists together. So kind of sitting with her through her late nights, writing articles and doing research together, and me kind of opening up my mind to like new concepts, right? Being more accepting and learning about other people's struggle and why they struggle, right? So I think absorbing all that information allowed me to be a bit more compassionate and understanding of other folks. So, and also being more compassionate with myself. Again, like I said, it all kind of happened at the same time. I was going through burnout. I was trying to come out of, understand myself better. And I felt like the more I learned about myself and the more I learned about, mental health and mindfulness, all these things just allow me to be more at peace, more calm, more understanding of my creative team, right? When they make mistakes, when maybe they're struggling with something, like immediately before, like if someone was late or if someone wasn't really doing their best work, I would think about like, okay, you're taking advantage, right? Sometimes I would think that, or like, okay, maybe you're not producing as much as you used to, or maybe you're being lazy, or maybe you have another client that you're working with someone else outside, right? Outside of work. But then after going through this process with my wife, it was like a whole different mindset. It was like what they call it, like a paradigm shift, where I'm like, wait a minute, maybe this person's struggling. Maybe they're dealing with something. Maybe they're stressed. Maybe they're burnt out. I've been there. Like I can see your eyes. I know what you're going through. So maybe we'll go to lunch. Maybe let's sit down and talk about something. So mental health and mindfulness has really allowed me to be a better manager, a better creative, a better husband, obviously, and father. Things that I didn't think I would be able to like withstand or even accept before. I'm way more accepting, even with my kids. Like just a funny story. My son, I'm Dominican, so baseball was huge. Like I literally didn't get married till like the Red Sox won back in early 2000. I literally was waiting for them to win to get married, and to move to Las Vegas. But that's a whole nother story. So baseball was a big deal for me. And then my son, obviously, when they're little league, right? I'm like, he's gonna go to Little League. He's gonna play baseball. I'm gonna watch him, and I'm gonna be a proud parent. He's Dominican like me, whatever. And my son just hated it. He was just playing with his shoes, playing with the dirt, right? And I'm just like, I used to get so upset. And then I remember having this shift in my mind and thinking like, you know what? My son doesn't have to be like me. He doesn't have to act like me. He doesn't have to like what I like. Like, why am I putting this pressure on him? And I didn't have that mindset before. And I feel like mental health and taking care of my mental well-being has allowed me to be more accepting and understanding, which leads to better communication with my team, better ideas, right? Collaborating better. I'm more accepting now. Like, if my team wants to do something, I'm like, well, let's hear it. How about you do that one and I'll do this one and let's compare, right? Maybe there's a way we could use that idea later on, right? So I'm a lot more accepting, and that's kind of what I like to, what I tell my mentees about mental health and making it a priority is that it will make you a better designer. It will make you a better creative, and it's going to help you be more aligned with your work, your life outside of work, kind of that work-life balance. It don't really only happens when you know and understand more about mental health, because you start setting boundaries, you start, doing self-care, right? All these things that come after that, that are really important. So that's why mental health is so important to me. Not just because I went through it, because I see other people struggling with it, and I feel like just starting the process of learning is going to help you so much.
I think that's a beautiful testament to just being open, having that growth mindset, and just being open and receptive to new things and learning, and when you learn to be better at like yourself, it affects every part of your life. Your father, you being a father, being a husband, being a manager, being a teammate, being a son, being a brother, it affects every aspect of your life. And again, it's something that we can, like, I always like joke that, there's things that I feel my parents did great, and I feel like there's things that they could have improved on.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, she agrees too. And as a parent, that's something that I now see, that I'm like, hey, obviously I'm not perfect, but if knowing the things I know, having these tools available to me that maybe my parents didn't have, I'm able to pass those things on and become better. Like, better, you do better. So I can be better because I know.
Absolutely right.
So I think that's a great point. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to tail on that just a little bit, because Cicely always talks about the things that we have to do in order to do other things, right? We can't go if we don't grow. We can't grow if we don't go. And I feel like that is so impactful in so many different areas here. When we talk about change being uncomfortable, but what prompts change is also creativity, right? Creativity prompts us to do something different that also triggers us to do something outside of our norm. And I love the fact that we talk about, chain reactions to things, because I do feel like that is such a huge, giant picture that we can always look at. Because we started one thing, it triggers and chains another reaction into something else. It triggers another reaction into something else. And it just continues to go on and on and on. So when I think about, people in tech and people in the creative industry that, may not relate to baseball, but they totally they understand that chain reaction, because that's a part of that process. Then it can be uncomfortable. It can be revealing. It can be awe-inspiring as well. So we take the good with the bad, and we also take it as a whole, as a collective, as part of a body, and not just dissecting it piece by piece, which I do feel like we as creatives are kind of do that on our own, right? We do it all by ourselves. We kind of take things apart and try to analyze and overlook and take it too far apart before we realize that they were meant to be together the whole time.
Exactly.
And so I just love that you shared those stories with us today. I love that. Thank you so much, Barney.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to work. At Southwest Gas, you're leading the visual identity for a large customer base. How do you ensure that brand alignment across such a vast and diverse audience stays in different states? And what are the key challenges and opportunities in maintaining that consistency?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And working for a utility company that has 2.5 million customers, we literally touch every single person in the states that we do business, right? From residential to businesses, from we have high end customers to literally like a mom and pop shop. So making sure that we are being inclusive in our creativity, in our choices, it's really important. So thankfully, I do work for a very diverse marketing team. Our marketing team is very diverse, so we have a lot of kind of checks and balances, right? So when we design something, we have a lot of eyes looking at it, making sure that we are being inclusive, we are including things that need to be there, and that we're thinking of, like I always say, like think of the lowest common denominator, right? Like who's like that customer that maybe can't speak the language, or maybe they can't even read, or maybe they maybe they don't have time to look at a bill. Like what's another touch point? So we have the paper bill, you have the app, you have the website, right? So thinking of how we can provide designs and solutions that are inclusive of everybody. And I mean, obviously we're highly regulated, so we are almost mandated to be inclusive, right? But even with that mandate, we've done a lot of growth ever since I've been in this company. I think the company has changed significantly. I think my addition to the company and this team, I feel like has made me better, but it has also made the company better. But yeah, it's all about thinking of your customers, thinking of that kind of lowest common denominator, and how can you help that person successfully use that product, and not being left out, and not feeling left out. And that even happens internally. Like internally, we have folks that are in corporate in an office, but we also have someone that's in the field, like literally laying pipe and making and digging the ground, right? So how do we communicate to that guy that's on the field, and that person that's maybe sitting at a corporate office or in a cube, right? So finding different touch points, obviously being inclusive with our language, with our photography, with our videography. These are all the things that we try to do to include everyone in the process. So, but it's night and day. It takes a lot. We actually recently did a video shoot, and we spent so much time just picking talent, like days looking at pictures, making sure we had the right family combo, so that we could really, so that our video could resonate with more folks. So it's a never-ending work, which is funny to me how all this talk about the talk about DEI and all these other things that are happening, when we know now, right? Like we're smarter now as a society. We know now that this is needed and it's helpful. Like we know it. We're not stupid, right? But for some reason, we're fighting against the grain. So anyways, I don't want to get into the political side of things, but that's how I feel about that.
Absolutely. And I think that's incredibly valuable right now in the times that we are living in the climate of our country right now, where we're being told that Black and brown or being diverse in any shape or form is a curse word, as people have pointed out, right? Like, I just feel like this is an era to show up and show out versus being in the condescending way that we are being painted to be. Again,
Right.
not being as political in that moment, but definitely can see the difference between using diversity, equity, and inclusion and not. Living with the acronyms and removing the acronyms and really getting down to the values of what this provides people.
The days of like marketing and advertising to one persona, those days are gone, right? And I don't think companies can survive without it. They just can't. So yeah, that's it's one of the things that I bring to every job that I work for. And also something that I keep in mind when I'm hiring, when we are expanding into a new product or a new area, we always have to keep that in mind. So it's very important.
And I think that's such a great lead in to we talk about mentorship. Yes. A lot of people come with different values, opinions. They'll walk in the door with a whole different mindset than the one that you have, right? When we're working with multiple different groups of people, not everyone's values are going to completely 110% align. But again, finding that common denominator and teaching young professionals that type of mindset early versus later, that's extremely crucial in their developmental growth as a professional. So I just feel like that's also a very good point to point out for people who are listening to this episode how important it is to find that common denominator, even when it's against your personal feels or morals. Not every day is going to be that mountain, but meeting people where they are in those spaces, that's true resilience. And that's what's going to forward your career forward.
I 100% agree.
Barney, I got a question.
Yes.
So what's one piece of advice you'd give our listeners who are seeking to create more alignment in their creative careers?
That's great. I think obviously, we talked about earlier about obviously kind of immersing yourself in the industry a little bit more, right? Trying to connect with others and listening to podcasts and reading blogs and all that. I think another way, I'm gonna go back to this self-awareness. I knew we were gonna be talking about this, but I started a newsletter that I released today on LinkedIn about the very same thing, and he talks about self-awareness. And I feel like as creatives, we eventually kind of hit that plateau, and you're like, okay, where am I going next? What I feel like, or maybe you're struggling in your career, maybe your creativity is not where it used to be. I always go back to becoming a bit more self-aware. Like self-awareness is going to really bring you, it's going to lead you to many places. And I want to give a little study here by the Harvard Business Review. I really recently read this article that said that 95% of people believe they are self-aware, but in reality, only 10 to 15% of people are actually self-aware, meaning that we walk around thinking that we understand ourselves and that we know like how we are perceived and how we are projecting, but in reality, we don't. Like the majority of us don't know that. And a great example of that is like, when you're like at work or in a group of friends and that one person leaves and then everybody kind of talks about them a little bit, right? Well, sometimes when we leave, people talk about us too, right? And we don't even know that, right? So becoming more self-aware, it's a great tool to understanding yourself, right? Kind of letting go of a lot of those maybe blind spots you may have, understanding that you do have blind spots. These are the things that are going to help you kind of break away from what you used to doing and start doing new things, right? So that's one thing that I talk about. And I mean, to give even more information about that, I started reading a book many years ago. And I say started reading a book because I read it over and over. So I never really stopped reading it. But it's called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And this is a book about the self. And if you read this book, it's a very hard book to read. You probably will cry. You have to take breaks. It took me like literally 3 months to read it the first time. But the book really goes deeper into the self and deals with imposter syndrome. It deals with self-esteem and some of these things that are holding us back. And I felt like once I read that book, probably after the third time, I started just becoming more aware of myself and some of my blind spots and being, again, more accepting, more understanding. And then I started looking other places for influence and for ideas that I probably wouldn't do before, all just by learning about the self. So that would be the first thing I would say. Another big thing that I tell creatives and my mentees is setting boundaries, man. Like we need boundaries. You have to have them. They're tough. I think Nas says that besides my kids, boundaries are my greatest creation. And I love that quote because once you start building boundaries around your job, even your personal life, even your partner, sometimes you have to have boundaries, right? So that you can protect your mental health. So boundaries, it's another great tool to kind of help you be more creative, help you have more mental space, and that mental creativity comes out when you have more, when you're protected, when you feel more protected, and protecting your mental health is very important. So and then the last thing I would say is, two more things. One is seek mentorship. Sometimes we get stuck. I've been stuck many times in my career. I've done a lot of reading and a lot of research to get unstuck out of things. And sometimes one simple mentoring session may get you out of that mind space. Might get you unstuck and realigned, right? So seek mentorship. And then the last thing is giving yourself kind of grace to shift and change, right? To pivot. Maybe you went to school for one thing and now you have a passion for something else. It's okay to change. Maybe you love photography now. Well, maybe start doing photography. And have a side gig and maybe open an LLC and maybe start a little side business, right? So give yourself grace and the permission to pivot and move into another space if you have to. And I hate to say it, but that goes for family and friends. You know, we have friends and family members that maybe are not serving us the best way, and we stay within that environment. So sometimes you have to walk away. So giving yourself that permission to step away, it would be another thing that I would add to that. I feel like that was a long answer.
Man, it's so good. It's just no, it wasn't long. It was
That's
just
the
really
only way
good.
that I like the answers, right? I do. No, I really love that. I mean, I think that your last piece of advice, the boundaries, I think is huge because people don't hear that. They hear all the other stuff.
Right.
And I think also, I mean, I'm big on the wellness too, mental wellness. And so boundaries, I know is a tough thing for everybody to
Right.
handle. So for you to give that advice, I mean, that to me is like, that felt really, really on point with it. And I love it because it is part of having those boundaries and also being able to shift and change and stuff. That's what makes our stories so beautiful.
Mhm.
You know, that it's like the plot twists and stuff like that.
Right.
That's what makes it exciting.
Yeah. And it's really, I mean, back to what we were saying earlier, that it really is about balance, right? You can't just tell your boss, like, I'm not going to take your call after a certain hour, right? You can set that boundary, but from time to time, you're going to have to be flexible and understand that, you know, things are not always going to go your way. But, you know, having those boundaries and setting them is very important. And, you know, another thing I would say about boundaries is that start slow. You know, if you're that kind of person that you feel challenged when you're setting boundaries with folks, maybe you feel like, you know, you insecure about it, start small. It could be with like turning off your notifications after a certain hour. It could be, you know, letting your boss know that, you know, certain days you need space to do a certain project or, you know, or taking that time off. Like start slow and then kind of ramp it up.
Yeah, I just love this so much. Like Barney, you have no idea. Like I feel like you have been such a strong relief, a firm hand, if you will, with many of our listeners today who are young, up and coming,
Yes.
looking to acclimate in the field, and are seeking that executive advice from older, and I would say older, I'll say senior
yes.
level positions, senior level, I think senior level, damn it, senior level people who are really just in this place of, I've done it, I've seen it, I've felt
Right.
it, here's how you can do it better. And I just feel like I'm always drawn to that. I am such a huge advocate for mentorship. I myself mentoring several people. And it's always so heartwarming, embodying, and even it just gives you this really deep sense of pride, knowing that you're a part of someone else's story in a way that shapes them fundamentally for the rest of life. And so I'm always like tickled to ask you, like, for you being the mentor, not the mentoree,
Right.
what's it like to be able to pour into young people and knowing that you kind of have a thumbprint in that process of helping them acclimate to the next level?
Gosh, I mean, if someone would pay me to mentor full time, that would be my perfect alignment, right? I feel like, you know, when it comes to my skills and my purpose, I know what that is, but sorry, my values, but my purpose, obviously, being mentoring. If I could do that full time, I would. I went through it. I mean, the things that I talk about are from my personal experience. I don't try to like read an article and, oh, I read this article, so now I'm going to school you on something I read or a video I saw, right? I literally talk about the things that I went through, the times that I got rejected, the times that I didn't get the job, the times that I was bullied by my director for many, many, many months, and how I came out of that situation, the time that I was fired and laid off, right? So I try to talk about it from experience, from the things that I went through. I don't try to like sensationalize anything. I say it exactly how I experienced it. And I tell my mentees in the very beginning, like, my mentorship is really about my experience and the way that I was able to overcome certain obstacles. And I'll give you that guidance. Obviously, I sprinkle in some other things I've learned, but I'll give you that guidance. But, you know, I'm not saying that I have all the answers or that I'm always going to give you the right advice. But these are the things that I was able to learn and do to get me to where I am today. And when you're young, in your 20s, for example, or maybe starting your career, there's so many things that you just don't know, simple things. And unfortunately for people of color, it's even greater. That list is like, it's front and back, right? It's like a trifold brochure, right? You have so many things you just don't know that you should be doing. That again, going to a mentor that understands you, maybe looks like you a little bit, really helps you overcome tough situations. And that's kind of what brings me happiness. That's my it's like it started as a hobby and it's become my passion, really. Like I would literally give up designing for mentoring, and I love to design.
I feel that. I'm
Yeah.
right there with you. I'm on the ledge. I'm living on the edge. Like I feel it. I feel it because I see the power that comes from being able to each one teach one. But I
Right.
also, but I have a heart for. I mean, same. I have such a deep heart for design.
Right.
And the way that I choose to use it as a communication tool to bridge gaps and bridge communities and bring people together.
Can I tell you what's one thing that I remember that really just like it was the light bulb in my head. It was a that masterclass platform. Dr. Cornel West had he actually has a masterclass about humanity. And I thought, oh, humanity. I'm like, I know what that word means, but like, do I really know? So obviously during COVID, I was bored at home. I'm like, well, let me take this masterclass. It's very expensive, by the way. I don't recommend it. Sorry, masterclass. You're way overpriced.
Promo code.
Let me tell you, man, that class just rewired my brain. It literally rewired my brain. And I started looking at humanity rather than like individual people. And I just started thinking like, we need to be better as humans. And how can I be better? What can I do? Sometimes we think about like the things that are happening in the world or happening around us that we want to fix, but then we feel powerless. Like, I can't fix that. I can't fix what's happening in the government. I can't fix something that may be happening in my job or my company or something, or maybe some things at home that you feel like maybe you can't fix right away, but you can fix other things, right? You can be nicer to your kids. You can be nicer to your spouse. You can be nicer to your neighbor or your mother-in-law. You can you can start mentoring and give back in that way, right? And I think that sometimes we feel like we have to do a giant gesture to be good to humanity, and it starts with the small things, right? And that's another thing that that masterclass really just rewired my brain, and I highly recommend it.
I'm so glad you shared that. That's great. I can't wait to share that also in the show notes. Speaking of which, we're nearing the end of our interview. Lady, is there any other questions that you would like to ask Barney tonight? Okay. I'm going to ask. Oh, yeah, please.
I just really appreciate the talk today, and just really, I really think that what you have to say will be wonderful for people who are kind of feeling some of the same things that you feel. Like, I think one of the most important parts of our podcast, and there are many important parts, like sharing our individual experiences, but knowing that there's someone out there or people out there who've experienced the same thing or who may be going through it right now, but that you can talk to them and tell them like, hey, this is how I was feeling, but it gets better, it gets greater later. There's something else on the other side of that. And
Absolutely.
I think people need that hope. I think especially when you're starting something new, or, like we talked about, being the only one in the room that looks like you or has your experience. I think it's really important to know that it's not like this forever, and there are spaces for you where you will be accepted and that things do get better. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
All right, y'all. This has been like so fun for me. I sound really calm, but in my head, I'm like, all the things. So for people who want to follow you, who want to know more about you, where can our listeners go to learn more about your work, connect with you, and perhaps even participate in that workshop?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I don't like to promote too many platforms, but I am very involved in social media, obviously, and LinkedIn is really my hub. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn in terms of, I have a creative group there called Creative Central. I have a newsletter also called Creative Central, where I typically have a newsletter once a week. One came out today. And then I also have my workshop that I typically promote on LinkedIn as well, which is called Thriving Creatively, Design and Mental Health. And I'm also very active on Instagram. So at Creative Central with a Z. That's kind of where you can find more of my like daily updates. Unfortunately, I post a little bit too much, so you'll see a lot of things coming your way. But I like to keep it fun. So like I have my side, like my reels are all memes and funny things that I love to see about creativity and creatives. But then my regular feed, it's more about obviously this podcast and other things that I may be doing. So that's where you can find me. And my workshop is being revamped completely. I'm actually working with some designers to redesign or rebrand it. And I'm also working on a website, and we're going to have hopefully in after March, we're going to have a monthly workshop happening virtually. So there'll be a lot of that coming out. So if you follow me again on Instagram or on LinkedIn, you can learn more about that very soon.
Barney, you're a top voice on LinkedIn for a reason. And I love the fact that you constantly share value and purpose in everything that you do. So this is why we're friends.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much.
Tell us about a project that went hilariously wrong. What happened and what did you learn from it?
Oh God. I mean, I do annual reports every year, and annual reports are like version 27. Seriously. It's just, I mean, it never fails where you're so annual reports every year, it's always a mess. They always look great at the end, but God, it's very painful.
Yeah, I can feel that pain. Yes.
Yeah.
So, what's your secret source of inspiration when you're feeling creatively drained? Where do you go, or what do you do to recharge?
Travel. So I think that what I like to do is remove myself from the work, right? So either go for a walk if you're feeling just tired and exhausted during the day. Go for like a weekend vacation or staycation if you're feeling that burnout feeling coming. And if burnout's like knocking at your door, then take that week or 2 weeks, go to like another country, go to another state. When you start seeing different things, your mind just forgets and start kind of rewiring your brain. So yes, traveling or taking that break is what I typically recommend.
Yeah, I went to Michael's craft store the other day, and that was
God,
great.
Michael's great.
I was on the phone actually, I think, with Danielle.
You know what's another great store is Trader Joe's. You go to Trader Joe's, they got so many cool designs and everything's so quirky, and your brain is just like going like this. So you go back to your desk, and you're set to go.
Well, and it does make you feel like you went to another.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Was it like they have all the Trader Joe's are named different things sometimes. So if you were stranded on I always say desert island, but I want to say desert island. But if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only bring 3 tools, digital or physical, what would they be and why?
Wow. Like my phone? I could bring my phone?
If you want to, yeah.
Well, I mean, I need my phone.
Okay.
I guess it would be my phone. I would bring that. God, 3 things that I would bring. That's a great question. I'm stumped. I guess my phone.
You need a charger of some sort of battery.
I love listening to music, so I would definitely bring headsets. I love immersing myself in music. I'm obsessing with like the Bad Bunny album lately. I can't stop listening to it. So, and then the third thing would be, what would be the third thing I would bring? I don't know. I'm stumped.
Okay. So question number 4, if you could travel back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a great question. Can I tell you that I remember one time, I grew up in Boston or New England, and there was one day that I was like maybe 12 years old, and I used to walk to school every day, even during a snowstorm. And there was this hill, and I would walk up this hill, and I would freaking hate it. And I would literally say to myself, like, one day this is gonna go away, and I'm gonna be in a better place. And when I talk to my younger self, that's the kid I talk to. That guy going up that hill in that snowy day with my feet freezing and everything else. I always go back to that kid and I talk to him, and I'm like, it's gonna be all right. You're gonna make it. Just go up that hill, go to school, don't worry about it. Do it again tomorrow and the next day, and you're gonna be all right. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. So what's the most unusual or unexpected place you'd love to create work? like beyond a canvas or a screen?
Beyond a canvas or screen. Wow, that's a great question. Where else would I like to create work? I was
Trader Joe's, maybe?
Well, I mean, for a long time, I've been obsessing over murals. Vegas has murals everywhere, and I would love to be a muralist. Like, I love like contemporary collages, like a collage and a mural thing. If I could have those three things come together, I would be so happy. So yeah, being a muralist would be the thing.
For people who are like behind the scenes or don't visually see, like, we are cheesing very hard. We are smiling very hard, and it's just
There's a lot of smiles.
It's a lot of instant joy. It's just a lot of happy joy in the space. So I'm just so glad that we got to have this moment with you, Barney, and we got to share a lot of personal insight, a lot of failure. I feel like that's the way that we all learn. We learn by failing. And I love the instrument of hope that you continue to bring through inside of mentorship and just in sharing your journey. So thank you again, Barney, for your time, your energy, your love, all the things. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for having me. I'm like honored to be here. I know that when we first met and we talked about your podcast, and just recently seeing folks that I know from the industry with you all, Anika, I believe, I was like so excited to be here today. So I'm just honored. So thank you. The last thing I would like to say is that for those listening is to remember that growth often requires change. So give yourself permission to change if things are not happening the way that you like them to happen. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning into the More Than Graphics podcast. For exclusive emails and comprehensive episode details, visit us at mtgthepodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with us on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook by following hashtag MTGthepodcast. So until we meet again, we're reminding you that you are more than the work you produce. You are more than your name badge, and you are most certainly more than graphics. We'll catch you next time. This tribe with a vibe needs you. Share MTG on social media, on your lunch break with peers, or send an episode to your techie bestie. This podcast is produced by Octane Design Studios. Catch you next time.